Alexei Navalny was born June 4, 1976 in Butin, a military town 40 miles southwest of Moscow, but he and his younger brother, Oleg, spent their childhood summers with their grandmother in Zalesy, Ukraine. His father, Anatoly, a soldier, and mother, Lyudmila, a microelectronics laboratory assistant, managed to open their own wicker furniture factory in the village of Kobyakovo following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Navalny moved to Moscow in 1993 to study at the People's Friendship University in the Faculty of Law. He received his degree 5 years later and continued on to study securities and stock exchanges at the Russian Federation's Financial University from 1999 to 2000. In 2010, Navalny won a 6-month scholarship to Yale University's World Fellows Program, a mid-career incubator for world leaders. Alexei returned to Russia and joined Yabloko, a Russian liberal and generally pro-Western political party, in 2000. He became the Moscow branch's chief of staff 4 years later. In 2007 he was expelled for nationalist activities, in addition to co-founding the Russian National Democratic Movement, which collaborated with the now-banned movement against illegal immigration as well as Great Russia. Navalny participated in the far-right Russian March, an annual parade that utilizes slogans like, "Russia for the Russians," and "Stop feeding the Caucasus." Navalny, however, maintains that he was expelled for demanding the resignation of party leader Grigory Yavlinsky. Navalny and Yabloko remain at odds. After parting with Yabloko, Navalny shifted into an anti-corruption crusader, first with the Rospil project, which monitors corrupt practices in government procurement procedures, and also by means of shareholder activism. As his first project, Navalny spent $20,000 to become a minority shareholder in Rosneft, Gazprom, Lukoil and Surgutneftgaz 2008. Alexei then used his shareholder status to request proprietary financial and administrative documents to track their business practices. Gazprom, the state-owned gas giant, became the first subject of Navalny's investigations. He posted a story to his blog about the purchase of gas by Mezrygengaz, a division of Gazprom, from Novatek, a smaller Russian gas company. According to Navalny's research, this transaction brought the sellers over $50 million. Although the Moscow Chief Administration of Internal Affairs brought formal charges against executives of both companies, most of the charges were dropped, officially due to lack of evidence. He has also investigated other major companies such as VTB Bank, Transneft, and TNK-BP. Most of these firms are state-controlled and operate in the oil and gas sector. Navalny's exposés showcase his detailed knowledge of Russian law and mastery of politics during the Internet age. He has since launched a string of online projects such as the Rosyama campaign in 2011, a website that provides citizens with a means of notifying traffic officials about dangerous potholes that are legally required to be repaired or cordoned off. According to their website, over 25,000 potholes have been repaired as a result of the campaign. Another project, the ROS-CHKKH Russian Communal Services campaign, is a similar website that provides a course of action for tenants who are struggling to get authorities to repair their homes. In addition to providing useful services, Navalny's accessible and engaging campaigns allow citizens a low-risk means to hold officials accountable and exercise their own legal rights. Alexei also created the Anti-Corruption Foundation (FBK) in 2011, the largest of its kind in Russia with 30 registered employees. The foundation is responsible for a number of projects similar to his LiveJournal exposés, studying publicly available information to document large-scale corruption in government. Demonstrations accusing the government of election fraud following the 2011 State Duma elections were the largest demonstrations in Russia since the fall of the Soviet Union. Navalny, along with 300 others, was arrested for disobeying police orders and organizing unsanctioned protests. Although imprisoned for 15 days after the first rally on December 5, Navalny was released in time to speak at the largest rally in Moscow, on December 24. There, in front of an estimated 60,000 to 80,000 people, Navalny coined the phrase, "a party of crooks and thieves," when referring to the ruling United Russia Party, led by Dmitry Medvedev and Putin. The turn of phrase immediately became a staple within opposition rhetoric and an internet meme. Navalny's arrest transformed the blogger into a tangible political martyr. According to a 2012 poll by the independent Levada Center, Navalny was only known to 6% of Russians in April 2011, but that number jumped to 25% in March 2012, just months following the election protests. Navalny remained a popular speaker at many other protest events and was sought after by both the Russian and international press as one of the protest movement's most popular leaders. As evidence of his efficacy as an opposition activist, Navalny's supporters also cite the fact that government-initiated lawsuits against him seem to escalate with his political popularity and anti-corruption efforts. In 2010, a case against Rose Pill was initiated for illegal use of state symbols. The logo is a satirized version of the Russian double-headed eagle state emblem. The case was never decided. In 2011, businessman Vladimir Stepanov sued Navalny for damage to his business reputation, after Navalny posted a YouTube video produced by Hermitage Capital that accused Stepanov, among others, of large-scale fraud. The court ruled the video as slander and, although Navalny was not involved in its production, a court found him guilty of slander because it was published on his blog, which was widely read. Navalny was fined then about $1,800 and forced to publish a retraction. Other cases have focused on Navalny's business and professional activities. These have included several charges of fraud and accusations that he illegally received his license to practice law. None of the accusations resulted in convictions until July 2013, when he was convicted of engineering the misappropriation of nearly $500,000 in timber. Prosecutors stated that Navalny had used his position as advisor to the governor of Kyiv, Nikita Belik, to convince Kyiv Les, a forestry company, to sell its timber at artificially low rates in 2009. Alexei on April 4, 2013, first announced ambitions to hold political office, stating that he would run for Russia's presidency and place current President Vladimir Putin behind bars. On April 10, the Kyiv Les case was closed for lack of evidence. Shortly after, the head of Russia's investigative committee berated his subordinates for not perusing the case against Navalny during a televised meeting. It was quickly reopened and expanded in scope. Navalny accepted the nomination for mayor from the Liberal Parnas party in June. He officially registered as a candidate on July 17, but the following day he was convicted in the Kyiv Les case and given a 5-year jail sentence. A crowd of 2,500 to 5,000 subsequently filled the streets around the Duma building near the Moscow Kremlin, in part due to online organizing by Navalny's wife. On July 19, the court in Kyiv unexpectedly released him under a travel ban but allowed him to return to Moscow and continue his campaign. His wife and supporters credited his release, which is a rare action by Russian courts, to the immediate and sizable protests. Navalny returned to Moscow via train on July 20 to a cheering crowd of a few hundred, the maximum amount that could fit on the train platform, to greet him. Although he publicly dropped his candidacy with the conviction and called for boycott of the election, on his return to Moscow, he vowed to stay in the race. With the help of his predominantly young supporters, Navalny's campaign raised about $3.09 million, 94% from private donations. Navalny began his mayoral campaign with only 3% support in the polls and ran what's been termed an American-style campaign, relying on his personal presence at numerous events to meet with potential voters. In addition to giving speeches at metro stops and on neighborhood playgrounds around Moscow, he had a well-trained team of supporters smile on street corners, hand out information and talk with interested passers-by. Shortly before the September 9 election, he was shown to have 18% support, having consolidated much of the opposition and many undecided voters around himself. Sobyanin's support was now closer to 50%, the minimum he would need to avoid a runoff election. Navalny's better-than-expected performance was additionally aided by a significantly low turnout, just 32% of Muscovites. While he came in second place with 27% of the vote, Putin ally Sergei Sobyanin collected 51%, just enough to allow him to win in the first round of voting. The following day, Navalny publicly challenged the election results and demanded a recount, but his request was denied by the Sobyanin administration. That evening, Navalny supporters organized a protest on Bolotnaya Square, estimated to have involved 10,000 to 13,000 people. 2 months later, Navalny and his brother, Oleg, were accused of defrauding several clients of a shipping company they'd started in 2008. Although none of the victims testified that they considered themselves defrauded, and representatives of their largest client, Yves Rocher, had even testified that their firm profited while doing business with the shipping company, the court found both brothers guilty. The brothers were scheduled to receive their sentences in January 2015, but their court date was suddenly moved to December 30, 2014, a time when Moscow is typically freezing and empty as most citizens leave for the long New Year holidays. The court sentenced Oleg to 3.5 years in prison while Navalny received a suspended sentence of the same length and house arrest. Discrepancies between the brothers' sentences caused Navalny to accuse the government of holding his brother hostage in retaliation for his political activities. Upon his release, Alexei refused to abide by his house arrest. Prison authorities followed him about his daily business and asked him to return home, but Navalny refused. The officers reportedly vanished 1 month after the sentencing, but as a twice-convicted criminal and known political agitator, Navalny's troubles certainly haven't. In December 2016, Navalny announced his intention to run for president in the March 2018 election, but his criminal convictions have stripped him of right to run for the Russian presidency, or any other public office. In spite of this, he's currently conducting his campaign anyway and has opened more than 60 campaign offices across the country and registered 570,671 people to support his candidacy. In order to run, he'll need at least 300,000 of their signatures when he tries to register. If elected to the presidency, Navalny promises exempt low-income entrepreneurs from taxes while establishing a high tax on excess oligarch profits. The minimum wage in Russia would increase to 25,000 rubles per month and the pension to exceed the minimum cost of living. Internationally, his campaign promises to establish a visa regime with Central Asian countries and cease operations in Syria and Ukraine. He also promises to use the federal budget for schools, hospitals and the construction and maintenance of roads. In December 2017, Russia's Central Electoral Commission barred Navalny from running for president in 2018, citing Navalny's corruption conviction. The European Union said Navalny's removal cast serious doubt on the election. Navalny called for a boycott of the 2018 presidential election, stating his removal meant that millions of Russians were being denied their vote. Navalny filed an appeal against the Russian Supreme Court's ruling on 3 January 2018. On 6 January, the Supreme Court of Russia rejected his appeal. Alexei Navalny led protests on 28 January 2018 to urge a boycott of Russia's 2018 presidential election. Navalny was arrested on the day of the protest and then released the same day, pending trial. OVD Info reported that 257 people were arrested throughout the country. According to Russian news reports, police stated Navalny was likely to be charged with calling unauthorized demonstrations. 2 of Navalny's associates were given brief jail terms for urging people to attend unsanctioned opposition rallies. Navalny stated on 5 February 2018 the government was accusing Navalny of assaulting an officer during the protests. Navalny was among 1,600 people detained during the 5 May protests prior to Putin's inauguration. Navalny was charged with disobeying police. On 15 May, he was sentenced to 30 days in jail. Immediately after his release on 25 September 2018, he was arrested and convicted for organizing illegal demonstrations and sentenced to another 20 days in jail. Navalny has released more anti-corruption videos since announcing his presidential bid. Among the most popular, Don't Call Him Diamond, accuses Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev possessing far more wealth than his government salary should allow. It has been viewed more than 25 million times since its publication in March 2017. On April 27, 2017, an unknown assailant waiting near Navalny's FBK office attacked the politician with Zelyanka, a bright green antiseptic dye commonly used to attack political persons in Russia that leaves victims stained bright green for days. Although this wasn't the first time Navalny was attacked with the dye, it was the first time the dye landed directly in his eye. He remains partially blind in his right eye. During the 2019 Moscow City Duma election, Navalny supported independent candidates, most of whom were not allowed to participate in the elections, which led to mass street protests. In July 2019, Navalny was arrested, first for 10 days, and then, almost immediately, for 30 days. On the evening of 28 July, he was hospitalized with severe damage to his eyes and skin. At the hospital, he was diagnosed with an allergy, although this diagnosis was disputed by Anastasia Vasilieva, an ophthalmologist who previously treated Navalny after a chemical attack by an alleged protester in 2017. Vasilieva questioned the diagnosis and suggested the possibility that Navalny's condition was the result of the damaging effects of undetermined chemicals. On 29 July 2019, Navalny was discharged from hospital and taken back to prison, despite the objections of his personal physician who questioned the hospital's motives. Supporters of Navalny and journalists near the hospital were attacked by the police and many were detained. In response, he initiated the Smart Voting Project. On 20 August 2020, Navalny fell ill during a flight from Tomsk to Moscow and was hospitalized in the Emergency City Clinical Hospital No. 1 in Omsk, where the plane had made an emergency landing. The change in his condition on the plane was sudden and violent, and video footage showed crew members on the flight scurrying towards him and him screaming loudly, as he later said, not screaming from pain, but from the knowledge that he was dying. Afterward, his spokeswoman said that he was in a coma and on a ventilator in the hospital. She also said that since he arose that morning, Navalny had consumed nothing but a cup of tea, acquired at the airport. It was suspected that something was mixed into his drink, and physicians stated that a toxin mixed into a hot drink would be rapidly absorbed. The hospital said that he was in a stable but serious condition, and after initially acknowledging that Navalny had probably been poisoned, the hospital's deputy chief physician told reporters that poisoning was one scenario among many being considered. A plane was sent from Germany to evacuate Navalny from Russia for treatment at the Charité Hospital in Berlin, even though the doctors treating him in Omsk initially declared he was too sick to be transported. They later released him. On 24 August, the doctors in Germany made an announcement, confirming that Navalny had been poisoned with a cholinesterase inhibitor. Ivan Zhdanov, chief of Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation, said that Navalny could have been poisoned because of one of the foundation's investigations. On 2 September, the German government announced that Navalny was poisoned with a Novichok nerve agent, from the same family of nerve agents that was used to poison Sergei Skripal and his daughter. Officials said that they have obtained unequivocal proof from toxicology tests. It called on the Russian government for an explanation. On 7 September, doctors announced that he was out of the coma. On 15 September, Navalny's spokeswoman said that Navalny would return to Russia. On 17 September, Navalny's team said that traces of the nerve agent used to poison Navalny was detected on an empty water bottle from his hotel room in Tomsk, suggesting that he was possibly poisoned before leaving the hotel. On 23 September, Navalny was discharged from hospital after his condition had sufficiently improved. On 6 October, OPCW confirmed presence of cholinesterase inhibitor from the Novichok group in Navalny's blood and urine samples. On December 21, 2020, Navalny released a video that shows him impersonating a Russian security official, in order to speak by phone, with a man who was identified by some investigative news media as chemical weapons expert Konstantin Kudratsev. The man said that the poison had been in Navalny's clothing, and especially concentrated in his underwear, and that Alexei would have died if not for the plane's emergency landing and quick response from an ambulance crew on the runway. On 17 January 2021, Alexei Navalny returned to Russia by plane from Germany, arriving at Sheremetyevo International Airport in Moscow after the flight was diverted from Vnukovo Airport. At passport control, he was detained. The Federal Penitentiary Service confirmed his detention and said that he would remain in custody until the court hearing. Prior to his return, the Federal Penitentiary Service had said that Navalny may face jail time upon his arrival in Moscow for violating the terms of his probation by leaving Russia, saying it would be obliged to detain him once he returned, In 2014, Navalny received a suspended sentence in the Yves Rocher case, which he called politically motivated, and in 2017, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that Navalny was unfairly convicted. Amnesty International declared Navalny to be a prisoner of conscience and called on the Russian authorities to release him. On 18 January 2021, a court decision ordered the detention of Navalny until 15 February for violating his parole. A makeshift court was set up in the police station Navalny was being held. Another hearing would later be held to determine whether his suspended sentence should be replaced with a jail term. Navalny described the procedure as ultimate lawlessness, and called on his supporters to take to the streets. On 19 January 2021, while in jail, an investigation by Navalny and the FBK was published accusing President Vladimir Putin of corruption, Putin's palace. His arrest led to protests across Russia on 23 and 31 January 2021. Navalny was nominated for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize by multiple Norwegian members of parliament. Alexei Navalny is married to Yulia Navalnaya and has 2 children, daughter Daria, currently an undergraduate student at Stanford University, and son Zakhar. Since 1998, he has lived in a 3-room apartment in Mariano district in southeast Moscow.